You're listening to another episode of a Mindful Moment podcast. I'm your host, Will Nicholls, and I thank you for taking a moment to be mindful with me. I'm here with Brent once again for a very, very late Aries season. Well, I guess in true Aries season fashion, the only true Aries season fashion about doing this podcast late is that we just did ourselves this whole season. Just been in the zone. I've been traveling all over Mexico, and and Brent, you've been busy. You're
Oh,
opening up a store.
yeah,
That's a big
certainly. I'm
new project.
opening up a store, working on some digital real estate, working on all kinds of different transitions into my life. And I'm sure a lot of our viewers and listeners here can probably relate to starting a lot of new projects, having a lot of movement in their lives as well.
Especially with all this direct energy. Because once we get into Taurus season, we're going to start having the retrogrades,
Mm,
Jupiter, Saturn,
Mars and
so
Cancer.
Pluto, yeah. And so, you got to utilize this to the max. And every Aries season, I think we should, because usually, not always, but usually every Aries season, we have pretty much all planets direct, which is nice. And this year is no exception. So I mean, this has been a great Aries season. We're about 10 days away from my birthday. No big deal. And happy birthday to all the beautiful Aries of this world. You are the light and leaders of the world. So we condone you and respect you and love you. Um, and represent fire signs, make the world go around, right? And also the Aries risings, because this is a very important season for Aries risings and also Aries moons. And if you have any significant Aries placements, that's going to be touched by the Sun, Venus, and Mercury. So, I mean, in
And
general, this,
any cardinal signs around 8 degrees all
yeah,
around really getting hit this Aries
oh
season.
yeah, yeah, lots of. This is kind of a weird Aries season because it has been like healing in many regards with all that Chiron. This is like the last couple of years of Aries seasons have had this where we'll have the sun pass through Chiron and usually Venus and Mercury around the same time. So it's been very interesting for people because usually we're used to Aries season of like just like go go go, and there is a lot of that, but we're also kind of forced to look at a lot of parts of ourselves that we may not always want to look at, and that's kind of the hard hitting part of Aries. Like you think about, okay, Chiron being healing energy and Aries being so direct and forward and passionate and just doing it, just going right into it. Well, like when we apply that to healing, like it can be rough for a lot of people, and so that's something that we got to take extra care of ourselves. And we'll talk about kind of what that full moon that just passed, what was happening there and everything that was going on. But I want to really get to the nature of Aries and and what that means. And I mean, it might be a little biased because I'm an Aries, but
That's why I'm here. Yeah.
that's why Brent's here to balance the tables. But Aries in general being the first of the zodiac, the first sign. Aries represents the child. They're the child of the zodiac. They represent the first initial impulse into matter and the impulse into desire. What is it that we're wanting out of life? Where is it that we're wanting to go? Like, let's explore. Let's figure it all out. Let's find out what works for us. That's really the type of Aries energy um, that we experience when we connect with Aries, and when we connect with the Ram, and we connect with the first sign of the zodiac. And the first is always the impulse. It's the initial. I mean, in the case of the zodiac being the kind of exploration of consciousness or God in a sense, you could say. Um, Aries being the first is that initial call that we are all given at some point in our lives or lifetimes where we're coming here. We're here. We're ready to go. It's time to me, Aries is really about following the call, the inner call. And like, I get that urge of passion and I go for it. That's Aries. It's like, it doesn't matter if, a troop of 1,000 men stand in my way. I'm going there, and that's that kind of, I'll just blow through it, right? I'll just go through it. That's a cardinal energy of the initiatory energy. It's also the beginning of the year. This is the true astrological year. This is when the year really, really begins, right? So that's big. The year doesn't begin on January 1st. It never has, besides the Julian calendar. But you know, the year truly begins on the equinox, the spring equinox. So the vernal equinox being the symbol of the ram, of the start of the year, when we start to get, you know, the snow starts to melt for most of us in the upper hemisphere of the world. And we start to see the blossoms. We start to everything starts to melt. We start to see some growth. We start to plant the seeds, you know, for summer and for fall, for the harvest later on in the year. This is when, you know, this is the planting. This is the planting point. So Aries can really represent the planting of our seeds, our intentions, our desires, and then Taurus nurtures those desires and seeds and takes care of them. And that's that shift from Mars energy of like planting, doing, creating, the hard work of, you know, tilling the soil and turning it all up and making sure that it's all good and watering it and, you know, taking good care of it. The hard work that's involved with planting and farming, that's kind of that Aries energy of you know, we'll just do it. We'll just do it. And we'll do it because of the rewards that await us, the riches that await us, the jewels, and also the fact that we're passionate about what it is that we're doing in the moment. And so that's something that Aries can really help all the signs in learning, is how to follow that passion, how to really follow your inner calling, your inner compass, your inner desire, because there's no one that, you know, can follow the impulse of passion quite as well as Aries.
Yeah.
And being ruled by Mars, you know, that it's like once that initial passion is kind of brought up, that initial spark, that's like, oh, it's brought up. Well, then we have the urge to do, the urge to go out, that Martian kind of impulse to create is what Mars is. Not just action and war and sexuality. It's first and foremost passion, because through passion, everything else is birth, really. You know, we don't get sexuality until we feel that bit of passion, right? We don't get any sort of aggression until we feel really passionate about a cause of some sort, right? That deep sense of devotion to the cause. And we don't get that the drive and the will until we have some passion behind it. Otherwise, there's nothing that keeps us locked on, you know. In order to maintain your frame of mind, in order to maintain your will and your focus, you need to have passion. You need to have some sort of spark that is saying, you know, this is why I'm doing it. If you don't have that, then you're just kind of aimlessly grazing in a field. And that can kind of be seen as like, you know, the ram just kind of not really knowing where to go, right? Not really understanding where it is that it wants to go, and then all of a sudden seeing something, getting, you know, super like excited, and then ramming forward, just going forward, you know, this burst. The one thing that you have to be mindful with in Aries season, though, is the the stamina, because that's something that that can be easily lost when the passion isn't there, right? Because the truth is, we're not always going to feel passionate about everything that we're doing. That's an inevitable, right? We can do our very best to feel as passionate as we possibly can, but the truth is, we're human beings. We get to feel the range of emotions, and those emotions are not always passionate, you know, and it's not always excitable either. So because of that, Aries, you know, the ram is not known for its long distance sprinting, right? It's the short bursts of passion, and then which is not to just start things and not finish them, because if we don't finish them, then, you know, what's the point of even starting it, right? And that's the truth, is like, you gotta follow through. And that's something that all the Aries, and I say this to myself as an Aries, and everybody else that's got, you know, some dominant cardinal energy, is finish what you start. You know, that's something that if we can learn that through Aries season, especially when, like we said, all planets are direct right now, we've got a lot of amazing energy to fuel the passion, fuel the urges, Mars on the North Node was a beautiful blessing this season, in a sextile with all that Aries energy. We have Mercury entering into Aries today as we're recording this. We have Venus in Aries, the Sun in Aries. Sun is exalted in Aries, so there's this huge burst of passion through ego and through personality as well, which when properly utilized is an incredible asset to the human experience, and allows us to go and create and have the boldness to go and create things that perhaps other people would never create. And I think that that's definitely one of the many gifts of Aries, is having that the kind of audacity that other people can be taken back by, but the audacity to create some crazy things, some wild things. And that's the kind of pioneering aspect of Aries too. It's like having the balls to be a visionary, because it takes balls to be a visionary. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. It takes that kind of hardness. It takes that like the you have to be willing to, in a sense, go into the fire and be seen and be ostracized and be told that it's not going to happen. And as I can say this as an Aries, like that's the shit that drives me. That's the shit that keeps me going, is like those people saying, what the fuck are you doing? It's like those people, I'm like, I'll show you. That's like the ultimate that's like the ultimate taboo cliche Aries, is I'll show you, and then they go and freaking do it, and you're just like, whoa, what the heck? Like, how, I didn't even think, well, that's so wild. So that's
Right,
the beauty of
there's a
Aries.
competition behind the Aries energy that
Oh
is,
yeah.
it's beautiful because there is some use in competition where we, like in a chess match, you really wanna have a good opponent that you're playing against, because then you can challenge each other mentally. But, Will, one thing that you said about Aries was that, we have that initial passion, because we know that there's some kind of reward that will be reaped whenever we do follow that passion. When we
Mhm.
have the idea, we see almost the manifestation. And you also mentioned that Aries is kind of like the baby being birthed, like the initial creation. Do you have any sort of connection to like why we might even come into this lifetime as babies? Like, how do we see our potential, do you think, as human beings before we're even born, where we're like, that's worth a lifetime, that's worth the suffering, that's worth the agony? Or do you think that's just something that we come into as an Aries, where it's kind of like we find ourselves as rams in fields, where we're just like, which way to go? Do you think that we have that initial kind of like, we know this life has got lessons and things like that, where like, can you describe the passion of the Aries? Can you describe how we know that there's a reward before we even start the work?
Yeah, I mean that's the passion of soul, and that's where the childlike element of Aries is often mistaken as ego. I think too much than what it actually is, which is just soul. It's like when you think of a child, you could say, "Oh, the child's got a big ego," but it's a child. It's just doing what it wants to do. And then us, with our hardened conditioning and egos, we look at that and we're like, who does that child think it is? Just
Mm,
saying that like saying some ridiculous shit like, magic is real, or some, like just dumb things kids say that adults kind of like, oh, whatever. But the truth is they're so connected to that. And at the highest aspect, so are Aries. We're connected through the passion of what is passion? Passion is the impulse of soul. At the end of the day, that's what passion is. The only way that we can get overwhelmed by that, or that kind of soul element can get undermined, is when we go into ego and when we rely on the personality too much. And there's a with Aries though, especially if you're an Aries sun, the personality is exalted there. Like this is, in a sense, the second best placement for the sun. And in fact, a lot of ancient astrologers talked about exaltations as being even better than domiciles, because it's almost like, when you get too familiar with the domain, you kind of get a little lazy. You kind of get, it's like, oh, it just is what it is, right? That's that. And when I think about the Aries that I know versus the Leos that I know, I think I can see that a lot, where a lot of times Leos are just like, oh, we're too familiar with this area, versus, and this is not all, of course, but a lot of examples have shown this to be true, And maybe it's because I'm an Aries and Aries season saying this, but I've just noticed that in general, um, the kind of the exalted energy of any planet, whether it's the sun or the moon or whatever, that tends to be something that we're almost consciously utilizing in every moment, versus when you have something in domicile, like, if I say was a Leo sun, I wouldn't be consciously using my personality in every moment. It'd just be kind of something that's like second nature, which has its benefits, of course, but it also has its downsides, because you're not, in a sense, consciously utilizing it to the highest capacity, because it's just like, oh, it just is what it is. It's second nature.
Mm.
Whereas when you have an exalted placement, literally any planet, when you utilize the exalted planet to its peak performance, peak potential, you're utilizing it consciously, and that's really what exaltation brings. It's a conscious awareness of how powerful this placement is,
Yeah,
and
and
so
now that you bring that up, though, it really makes sense when I think about the differences between Aries and Leo. Whereas, like, I think of Carl Jung as like the prime Leo, where he wasn't so much wrapped in his personality as much as he was like, I want to study what personality means. Whereas when I look at an Aries, and especially when I look at you as an Aries, what I really see is you're using that personality as a sword, as a shield, as a weapon, as like a you lead with it. Whereas maybe a Leo might just engulfed in it, and they might not even know any better. Whereas an Aries is like, this is how I move through the world. A Leo is like, this is my world.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe the differences.
And it almost can, and something that I've noticed with domiciles, and I say this because I have my moon's in domicile, so I've got a few
Hmm.
planets that are like that. And with domiciles, it's almost like there's a slight ignorance there, where you can't always see all the blind spots. And of course, any sign that can happen, but
Hmm.
I've noticed that when exalted placements are utilized to their potential, that's a lot less likely to happen than if you have domicile placements. And that's just it
It's
is
a
what it
it's a
is.
it's a funny contradiction of astrology, that the things that are easy in astrology are usually the ones that we have to watch out for the most.
Exactly. Trines are a good example of that too, Like,
Hmm.
it's very easy to get trapped in habits when you have trines. Everyone thinks, oh, trines are a great, beautiful placement. That's so great. But it's just like, well, I certain trines in synastry are great, but they can also keep you like locked in these loops of like emotional
Yeah.
habits. And it's like, that's not always a good thing. Like, I personally, I like to square off, I like
Yeah.
squares in synastry. I love it because it always keeps the momentum going, right?
It's
It's
a
like
it's a
it's
it's sort of
always
polarity.
forcing you to do something. Yeah,
Yeah. And that's what I've really loved too, as well, about having something like Venus in Aries this season, where Venus is in its detriment and across from Venus in Libra, where we get to experience what relationships are like from our perspective. We get to experience relationships from like more of an introspective point of view, rather than the way that they're intended to be in both Taurus and in Libra, which is about uh, how we work with the other. And I like that we get that healing aspect with Chiron, Venus, and the Sun all this season.
totally, totally. And yeah, I mean, one thing that we always have to look at for Aries season is what Mars is doing, and that's a very important
Mhm.
placement. And this season's very, very special because of
Yeah.
Mars's um, aspects. Not only is Mars sign, um, but it's also conjunct the North Node, and made that conjunction during this season. And that's something that's we can't take lightly
Well,
because
let's let's get into that for a second. Let's talk a little bit about like the real specifics about what Mars on top of the North Node in Gemini. What is that shown like for you, Will? I'll give my example after you, but what does that look like for you?
well, even before we can get into that, like the soul centered ruler of Aries is Mercury. So right
Mhm.
away we kind of have this this interaction between Mars and Gemini and Mercury and Aries,
Mhm.
right? These are two planets um, that are connected
They
very
they
much
work
with
really well
Aries.
together. Yeah,
They
they
do.
have a good synastry with each other.
They do, and not only because they're sextile by sign, but because they are. I actually forget what the term is called. It's like an ancient astrological term that has eluded my mind now. But
It's not mutual reception.
yeah, it
No,
is
that's
mutual reception.
okay. Yeah,
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 yeah, mutual reception. So
yeah.
that's exactly what's happening with Mars and Mercury right now, because Mercury is in domicile in Gemini and Mars is in domicile in Aries, and they're flipped there. So not
And
only do you have that
mantra,
interaction,
the esoteric mantra for Aries is we talked about this right before. It's
I come forth, and from the plane of mind I rule.
mhm. And that's a perfect description of this Geminian energy too within the Aries season. And the other thing to note too about Mars this whole year is that it doesn't station retrograde once. It's just trucking. It's just going this entire year and giving us that push to get out of our initial comfort zones.
So Mars on the North Node is a very interesting transit that doesn't happen too often. It usually happens once every year and a half, 2 years. So it's very, very special, especially considering Mars, while doing that, is doing that in Aries season in a mutual reception with Mercury. So we have this right
Mm,
away, this connection to our voice and our mind and our vision, right? Not only with Mercury, but with Mars and Gemini being very much, a visionary placement of, how can I find, in a sense, the middle path, right? What is the direct path for me? With the North Node in Gemini, it's really looking at our overall vision for ourselves and our life and where we're going. You could say in many ways, are we fulfilling our dharma? Are we fulfilling our purpose? Are we on that path at the very least? Are we on the path there? And if we're not, then we got to take a big look at what needs to change in order for us to get back on the path. Because with like, this is not, like I said, this happens. Mars takes about 18 months to go do a full cycle around the zodiac, which is almost 2 years, and so it's not going to hit the North Node, like it's once almost every 2 years. So that in itself, these transits we always need to pay big attention to, transits that don't happen very often, because they're very important to us. And as I said, this is a very special thing, because what are really the chances that it's going to happen, that Mars is going to make this significant placement in Aries season, in a Mars ruled season, simultaneously in mutual reception.
mm,
And Aries is on the soul centered level ruled by Mercury. So we have this deep connection here going on, where with Mercury and Aries, as we're entering into Mercury has just moved into Aries today. It's been in Pisces for the time being. But even then, during that actual initial full total conjunction of the North Node and Mars, we had a square by sign, right?
mm.
So right away, like that alone is very impactful too, where it's kind of like a little thrust onto our path. It's a nudge. With Pisces, it's a gentle nudge, but it's a kind of gentle nudge to find our voice, find our calling, find, how can we best express ourselves now? And that is ultimately going to lead us through that square, with the North Node and Mars, into alignment with where we're wanting to go. How can we best utilize our creative energy, Mars in Gemini, to fuel our overall vision with the North Node in Gemini, right? How can we do that this season? These are the big questions that we got to be asking ourselves, because Aries is all about the passion. So, how can we utilize the passion to fuel our vision and ultimately guide us in our creative process as we enter into our dharma, as we walk our path, right? The path of soul, the path of God, the path of our purpose, you could say, in many ways.
And additionally, on top of that point with Mars and this season being so potent for relationship healing, we got to remember that Gemini really it is the mind, but it also is the twins, it's the lovers, it's the split between masculine and feminine. And for the past like several months, but specifically this past Aries season, I've noticed just this giant increase online of relationship coaching. I've noticed this increase of of like red pill content, of feminine content coming out, where we're all really learning what our roles are in this lifetime, as well as learning how to interact with each other's roles and create polarity with one another. And it seems like this season has really been bringing us that Aries passion, where we all want each other, but to actually get with each other, we have to form something that's stronger and more meaningful, that actually makes sense on multiple levels, not just on the physical, but as well as really the mental. And takes a lot of healing to get through those phases. I can't hear you, Will. So Will is trying to get his audio back on, but overall, generally in this Aries season, we really are learning how to fuel our passion, but in the direct correlation to our purpose, to our actual dharma, like Will is saying. This energy right now is so heightened, and I want you guys to be aware of this as well, because um, Aries season this year is super fiery, but as we move closer and closer towards Taurus season, welcome back, Will. As we move closer and closer to Taurus season, this energy is actually going to be winding down, where we're going to have Venus in Taurus, Mars in Cancer, and this is a good time to really be putting in as much work as you can, so that you can actually prepare for the future that is coming. So, Will, do you have your audio back? Okay. So he's still working on it. It's all good. So like I said, guys, when we have something like Mars in Gemini in a season like Aries season, we have to be careful of a few things. With something like Mars in Gemini, Gemini is a sign where we generally have so many different passions. We have so many different curiosities. Gemini is a sign that is constantly curious. You can think about how your mind is constantly curious about trying to discover new answers to your questions. And so you have to ask yourself, with Mars, what is my one pointed direction? What is my actual life path? What is my actual purpose? Who am I going to be doing this with? What kind of relationships am I going to be doing this with? What kind of family members do I want to do this with? How can I improve my communication so that it's a little bit more vulnerable, so I can actually connect empathetically with people, as well as to connect on some very soul-centered levels with others? And in Aries season, it can be easy to sometimes like plow over people. It can be easy to be in competition with people. It can be easy to create a competitive mindset, especially with a Geminian placement, because we have that sense of mental competition as well as physical competition.
Exactly.
Welcome back.
Thank you. I prayed to Quetzalcoatl, but apparently he didn't answer my prayers all the way. So anyways, no, I agree completely. And I think that in general, we're overall, this is like a super creative season, and we have to utilize that. And in many ways, we can transmute that creative energy to ultimately, guide us through our healing process. Like when we can say, this is where I'm going, right? This is the pathway that I'm taking. Like I'm set on that. I'm feeling the passion. I'm guided by my creative process. And often, the healing that needs to take place in order for us to like fully walk that path, which is, that's always how it has to be, is just in general, like, that's what can assist us on that path. That's what can ultimately take us to where we need to be going, which is, the path of alignment, which is where we want to be, right?
Yeah, and that's really something that, like I was just saying a second ago, that when we have something like this Gemini energy, we're curious about so many things. We're pulled in all these directions, and it's so important with Mars to just say, this is my direction. That passion of the ram needs to be directed into something that feels like a spiritual path, that feels like dharma, that feels like a purpose that we live on, rather than just like uh, our interest being peaked all over the place in different areas.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So how about we pull up some charts now?
Yeah, that sounds good. All right. So the very first chart that we have up here is the Libra full moon here. So this was all at 8 degrees. And this was still one of the most potent moons I feel of 2021 to begin with. Will, I'll let you introduce this one just so you can throw your thoughts on here.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, Libra moon, this time always get that. That's always the first full moon of the astrological year, which is a beautiful blessing, because it really helps to set the tone for the rest of the year. The first moon's the first new moon, which we're having on the 11th, and the first full moon of the year. These are very, very important moons because they kind of they guide us. They set the tone. It's kind of like when we hear the gunshot of as we're starting a race. It's like that puts us in the zone. It puts us in the mood to
Mm.
go and achieve. And in the same way, the Libra full moon of every year is always a very, very important one. This one, however, is extremely important because we have a triple conjunction between the
Whew.
sun, Chiron, and Venus, all opposite the moon.
At 8
So
degrees
at
exact
eight
like,
degrees,
it was incredible how they lined up so perfectly for this full moon to really kick it off. It really just it immediately says, like, this year, that gunshot, it's all about healing our relationships. It really is, with Venus and Chiron, right on top of each other like that. It was astrology never ceases to amaze me with the alignments that can happen, and this year really did set the tone for that as well.
totally, totally. And when we have the sun conjunct Venus, let's just break each of these down.
Yep.
Because when we have the sun conjunct Venus, we have this, amplification of the passion, especially in Aries. Actually, I have a sun Venus conjunction in my natal chart, a little bit later degrees in this, but the sun Venus, naturally it creates this emanation of creative and passionate energy. Um, and as we kind of experience the magic of utilizing our passion, utilizing our creative drive, we can come to just this beauty, the state of beauty, because to me, beauty is the full expression of your passion, and then naturally that gets emanated physically and spiritually and mentally and in all the areas. But it's like when you're following your passion, when you're following your purpose, there's a beauty associated with that that's amazing. It's so magical, it's so beautiful. Like you can't, like when you see someone that's doing exactly what they love to be doing, there's something so inspiring about that innately, right? We you can't help but be inspired by that. And with the sun conjunct Venus, we have that energy. We have this passion that's being brought up, that's being aroused within us. Now we also have Chiron square in the middle of this, conjunct the sun, conjunct Venus. So now we have this element of what needs to be done in order to allow this passion, this beauty to fully emanate. And who's to say that that healing isn't beautiful? Who's to say that ultimately healing isn't a beautiful thing? Because, to me, healing always looks messy, in the moment, but it ends up being the most beautiful thing you could have ever imagined because we can see all the areas that we were once wounded, that we had kind of been dragging our feet, or we've been bleeding out a little bit. And when you heal that, you allow yourself to be performing at your peak capacity. You allow yourself to really be the best version of you possibly can be. And that's what matters most. At the end of the day, like what like get rid of the obstacles so that you can go to where you need to be going, right? Like what other point is there of life? You want to be limited by your obstacles? You want to be held down by this? You want to be pinned down by this? You want to just be like that guy that's bleeding everywhere? It's like, no. Actually, funny quick little story, it made me think of this, saying bleeding everywhere. I was at the airport in Cancun, on my final flight here in Mexico to Guadalajara, and I go to the bathroom, and as I'm going to the bathroom through the terminal, there's just like
this trail of blood like to the bathroom, and I'm just like, what the fuck? There's like blood all the way in, and I go, this is disturbing, but I go in the bathroom, I go in the bathroom because I need to go to the washroom, and there's blood all like dripping all
Mm.
throughout the bathroom, and in every single sink there's like a pool of blood, and I'm just
Whoa.
like, what the fuck is going on here?
That's wild.
Like it's crazy, and like literally every
It's,
single sink.
Chiron and Aries coming out, huh?
Yeah, yeah, literally. I'm like, oh my
Yeah,
goodness,
that's a literal term. Yeah,
this is
yeah.
crazy. And this is a few days before
Mhm.
this. I think that was right around the time when Venus entered into Aries. Aries
Yeah.
on the it was like the 20th that I was traveling, right? For the 19th, I guess. But yeah, it was like that was just so. Actually, no, that was, now that I think about it, that was the first day of Aries season.
Oh shit.
But
Wow.
that's what it's like, when we're wounded, and when we're not addressing what needs to be addressed, and when we're just kind of ignoring it, and we're not allowing ourselves to do what needs to be done, then we're that guy. We're that disgusting guy who just drips blood everywhere in public
And it's funny
places.
because like it's not so literal, it's so figurative, but like people sense that we're walking around bleeding. People are
Yeah,
like, wow, that guy needs help or that girl
yeah.
needs help, and it's like we might not see that we're bleeding, but we're walking around with a trail behind us and it's obvious for those who look at us, but maybe not so much for ourselves.
Totally. And in the context of relationships, which is a big theme for this full moon, this full moon was a huge, I would say, relationship awakening for many people of, what needs to change, what needs to be resolved,
And I love that
loose ends.
I love that Mars is on the North Node too, because Mars in Gemini really shows you the split. Are you going to choose the path of your purpose, or are you going to stay bleeding? Are you going to stay in this woundedness, this victimhood, this idea of healing is some other guy's journey, right?
Hmm.
Like there's two paths you can take there. One, and it's your choice to take those paths. And the Libra over here is like it's giving you the intuition to know that those paths exist, but it's the Aries in us that says, you know what, I'm willing to actually make the change. I'm willing to go and experience war and battle and possibly die on the battlefield and be rebirthed anew.
Exactly. And I mean, this is the kind of radical change that a lot of us have felt from this full moon. I mean, the full moon is in a quincunx with Uranus, exactly. So there's this huge element of, we need to radically shift the direction that we're going in order for us to feel more grounded in who we are, feel more grounded in, what it is that we're desiring, and owning those desires, because that's a very important element. We also have the North Node and the South Node in aspect with Saturn too during this full moon, right?
Yeah.
And this is
Wow.
still going on, right? So we really gotta look at exactly what Brent said. What is the pathway here? What are we going to choose? And it's not always the easy path. It's not always the easy path because we have so much conditioning. We have so much conditioning to kind of desire the easy way out. A lot of times choosing the path of soul requires us to kind of bite the bullet a little bit, kind of say, ooh,
Oh,
there's
but
gonna
they'll judge me. Oh my gosh,
they'll
but they
judge me.
they won't
This is a lot
understand.
of work,
There's a lot of work.
Oh, there's so much work associated with this. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, but what about all the freedom associated with that when you put in the work?
And
It's
also,
like,
what about the perspective of you not putting in the work? What does that look like?
exactly.
That looks way worse than putting
Yeah.
in the work.
That's
Yeah.
called suffering,
Yeah.
long-term suffering. It's like
Yeah.
you can suffer short-term to put in the work and grind it out. I was just talking with a friend about this being an entrepreneur the other day. It's like that's the thing about being an entrepreneur. When you get started, you're working 24/7. You are
Yeah.
literally working 12, 15-hour, 16-hour days sometimes because you're setting up the system for freedom. Right? You're
Yeah.
setting up your system for freedom. And in the same way, that's really what's being created. Now, this is a little bit different. It's not always in the context of entrepreneurship, but however, with that North Node in Mars, that's a pretty good creative entrepreneurial aspect. I mean, I'm starting some new projects. Brent, that was around the
Yeah.
time
Like,
when you signed for your your lease, right? For
Yeah,
the place.
I built an entire website in one day. Then I did a podcast, and then I went to a pop-up shop and stayed there till midnight. And then this morning I get on a podcast with you. Like that was all yesterday, you know? So it's like
Mhm.
entrepreneurship. I have so many hats on, and so do you. But that's truly, see, it's the part about doing so much that I love. That's why I love entrepreneurship, because it feels just like the spiritual path of healing. It really feels like, and not to say that entrepreneurship's for everybody, but when you have a purpose, it's like your life begins to make sense for you, rather than just like following some guidelines for how to live, or you know, reading some self-help book and trying to figure out, is this what life is? It's like unique to everybody.
Exactly. And, I think that's kind of like that Gemini, like, you can balance all the books, and, you can kind of do everything. You're juggling everything.
Yeah,
And especially with that trine to Saturn, which I really feel is a nice trine, because not
super.
only is Saturn in domicile there, and in Aquarius, it's very much more so of the visionary aspect, as
Yep,
opposed to
yep.
in Capricorn, it's more about the grinding, type of aspect of Saturn. So we have this element of like, what are the necessary steps that we need to take in order for us to get back on the path? Because
Hmm.
I truly feel, especially towards the end of the astrological year of the last year, people have been really disoriented. People have been really, kind of like all over the place and not really sure. And I mean, that's what I love the most about Aries season every year, is like we can depend on that clarity to come forth, to really just push us in the direction that we need to go. And then from there we can say, okay, let's do it, let's start it, let's make it happen. And I
Hmm.
mean, like I said, this all planets direct, all planets direct. There's nothing in the way besides yourself, and we're being given so much support with Mars on the North Node, so much support for our purpose with this, even with this full moon, Sun, Venus, Chiron, like, let's get rid of all these old habits, these old beliefs, these old emotional muck that's getting in the way of us fully seeing the vision, right?
Mm.
Fully seeing that Mars and North Node in Gemini, fully being able to see clearly what's going on. And at the same time, let's make some radical shifts, right? That aspect between the moon and Uranus. Let's make some radical shifts into the right way. This is a big pivot point. I really feel like, end of March it's been a really big pivot point for a lot of people to say, okay, now that we're entering into April, what's happening? Where am I going? What do I want to create for myself? Where is it that I want to go? What is the path for me? And some of you have never asked that question before, right? And maybe you haven't necessarily even asked that question consciously, but it's been kind of going on in the back of your mind, and you've kind of been like, just operating from that place, and that's fine too. But ask these questions, step into this place, get this clarity. If you're able to do that even post full moon, because we're still in the full moon energy for like,
Hmm.
2 weeks pretty much, so up until the, like, really, a week and a half until we start to get into that new moon energy. So, and we're still in this full moon energy. We're still coming out of it, and it's, utilize it to the max. With Libra, it's really about balance, about balancing it all out. And I mean, the moon's an aspect too, with the North Node and Saturn as well. It's a nice little
Yeah.
grand air trine that really creates some clarity.
You know, I really love this chart specifically when I look at this numerologically. When I look at obviously how many eights there are, but when I look at like something like Saturn, you know, it's like there's the number 2, which is the number of balancing. Well, you know, you got two scales, two sides of that. But then the number 8 really is the number of balance too. It's the number of bringing in abundance from that balance. Like 2s and 8s in numerology are almost identical, but in different parts of the spectrum. And there's to see Uranus aspecting the moon like that. I really feel like a lot of the changes that have been happening in people's lives, that just like what you're saying, it's been maybe in the back of the minds of some people. That back of the mindness is really coming forth and bringing that like it's unseen. Like you, in fact, like sometimes we don't even know that we have a vision until it's like thrust into us from like a Uranus kind of point of view, where it's like, oh, here's all the pieces. They've all come together now. Are you going to go? You know, and it's like finally things are, it's like the light has turned from red to green. and now you have to decide to go. And you can be like, well, I've sat at this red light for so long. Well, it's time to go. And making that decision, you have doubt, you have worry, you have fear, you have anxiety, you have a questionable sense of self. There's so many aspects that we have to overcome, and that's really a big part of a Libra full moon. It's like, are you going to make the decision to actually move forward with your life?
Exactly. All right, let's look at the next chart that we have pulled up here.
Oh, let's see. How do I do that? I messed up, so we'll just do this. There we go. Nope, that's not the right one. I'm not sure I messed this up so much. Let's see. This is the one we're looking at. This is today's chart.
Yeah. So Mercury enters Aries this evening.
And look at just this fantastic Aries energy going on here. Just peak Aries energy going on.
Yeah, we have the sun square the moon in a nice crescent as we're preparing to enter into slowly into the balsamic phase, into the new moon. Yep. So, right away, this is good energy for, like I said, getting super crystal clear on where it is that you're wanting to go from here. Don't, especially as Mercury enters into Aries, it's like now the boldness comes out. We've had the kind of passion with Venus in Aries, but that can also lead to some impulsion. And then, with the sun, of course, and Chiron, that's all fine and dandy. We're really addressing what needs to be addressed. But as Mercury now enters into Aries, this is the soul-centered ruler of Aries, so this is a soul-centered rulership, which means that on a personality level, this is seeming very chaotic, with Mercury in Aries can be very impulsive and very just blurting out, things that you don't really think. It's more like I'll say it and then I'll think about it type of energy.
I think we see that a lot in the collective too. I mean, there's a lot of warring going on between like the sides of how people feel about certain like political issues and certain issues that are going on. It's like we are in this kind of war state, and we have been since 2020. And I think whenever Mercury really does enter Aries, which is today, it's we're going to see a lot more of the people either standing up or getting defensive or whatever you might want to call it. And this reflects in our internal relationships with our close family members and then ultimately with ourselves.
Absolutely. And this is a big placement for advocacy and creativity, really following your own path and being not afraid to speak the path. And to be honest, I've already been really feeling that even in the days leading up to this, but especially as we're in the final degrees of Mercury in Pisces entering into Mercury in Aries, that's just going to come full throttle. So I hope y'all are ready.
Because, Mercury in Pisces, though, it's like we are speaking from our souls. But now when we have Mercury in Aries, it's like we're really speaking from our sense of self, our truest embodiment of spirit. Whereas before, it's kind of like this dreamy energy. We're trying to figure things out. But now in Aries, it's like, you know what? I have figured it out. I'm ready to shout what I know off the ceilings, off the roof of reality.
Exactly. And it's kind of funny because traditionally we can see Mercury as being, not a great placement in Pisces, even though, to be like completely honest, I love Mercury in Pisces, and I think it's a beautifully artistic placement, so poetic and so soul-centered in that way.
The stars are alive, the trees, they breathe, the the air I breathe, it's like it's very personified of nature, and I love that as well.
It was a crisp morning, and all I tasted in the air was the sea salt of the local ocean. It's like you feel that level of passion. But the truth is, both Pisces and Aries harness that soul energy just in very different ways. Pisces is a lot more gentle of a way. Mercury in Aries is a lot more loud and abrupt. But the thing is, we all have our roles, and sometimes we need to be loud and abrupt, and we need to stand up for what we believe in, and other times we need to be more compassionate and a little bit more gentle with our approach. And as an Aries, I can say that I kind of fall right in between there, because I do have a Pisces rising and a Cancer moon. But so the compassion's there, but it usually comes off as a little abrasive for people. But that's my mojo. That's the jam. That's the flow.
It reminds me of what Jordan Peterson says about speaking your truth. He says, either you're going to say the truth and you're going to speak your truth, or you're going to pay the price for
Yeah.
not speaking. You pay a price if you speak, and you pay a price if you don't speak. And it's your
Exactly.
choice to say, I want to pay the price for whichever direction.
And that is Mercury and Aries summed up, really. It's
Yeah.
like, it's being willing to take the heat of speaking the truth and speaking from soul at the highest level. At the lowest level, you're argumentative. There's this kind of, a lot of
I'm right.
disagreements.
I'm right.
Yeah, the too much hot-headedness, that you
Yeah,
have to be mindful of, especially with all the other planets in Aries. But in general, like, we really have to just look at, okay, how can I speak my truth? How
Yep.
can I use the passion of my soul to speak what my soul needs to express now? And how can I do that with conviction? How can I do that with clarity? How can I do that with passion? How can I do that in a way that assists people in finding that power within themselves? And that's the peak of Aries. That's the peak of Mercury in Aries, is utilizing the will of the mind. I come forth, and from the plane of mind I rule, not from the
Yeah.
plane of reality, because it all starts in the mind. So if you really want to influence people, you have to influence their minds. You have to let them come to their own conclusions, which is the delicate balance with Mercury and Aries. Is you do have to leave space for people to come to their own conclusions, but at the same time, you don't have to. It doesn't have to be at the expense of your truth. It doesn't have to be at the expense of your passion. It doesn't have to be at the expense of your creative process, because that is what ultimately inspires people the most, is when you're walking the path, when you're living from integrity, when people see you, and I'm sure people feel this way about you, Brent, and I know people have told me that they feel this way about me, is like when we're sharing from soul and we're really hitting and resonating, and it's like a tuning fork, when you really get that frequency and it starts to be the whoom, 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 it really resonates within people, and that's kind of how you want your speech to be. That's how you want your vocabulary to be. That's how you want your form of expression to be. You want it to be in a way that can really resonate with people, and but without sacrificing your truth, without sacrificing your integrity, because it's gotta come from that place. Otherwise, it's impossible for you to resonate with people, because you may resonate with a few people, but you're not going to resonate with people on the soul level if you're not speaking from truth, if you're not speaking from soul. So that's the primary foundation. And then secondary to that is bringing in some more conscientiousness to say, okay, how can I utilize my vocabulary? How can I utilize my passion? How can I utilize my gifts in order to express myself in a way that really resonates with people on a soul level, and bring in the passion, but bring in the compassion, really allow myself to be heard by people and do so in a compassionate way. Don't you can't have compassion without passion. So that doesn't mean that compassion is like, oh, it's like, no, you could sometimes compassion is loud. Sometimes compassion is very loud, because when you're so filled with passion for everything that you need to say, that's how I've been feeling about everything that's going on in the world right now. I've been feeling ultimately like very much more passionate than I have been all year, because of just, how many people are being fooled by the illusions going on in this world, and channeling that passion into compassion to allow myself to speak my truth and really resonate with the people that need to hear it. That's what drives me. That's what keeps me up at night, but that's also what gets me up in the morning, and
Yeah.
gets me doing what I need to be doing in order to really serve people in the highest capacity. And at the highest capacity, every sign operates from service in different ways, and the way that Aries operates from service is through passion, and inspiring and awakening that passion, being that inner fire for people, being that torch for people to light them up as well. It's like saying, you can have some of my fire. Lighting a candle does not take away from the candle that is already lit. And that's really the peak Aries. The highest evolution of Aries is being able to maintain that childlike joy, being able to maintain that childlike passion, and express the self as soul, while simultaneously being that torch for others in the process of that.
And I would even attest to just kind of going back for a second about the resonance of relating to people on that empathetic level. I would almost say that when I'm speaking, generally, I'm not thinking almost ever. I feel like those two things are really separate for me. Like when I'm
Mhm.
speaking from soul, when I'm speaking from spirit, and I'm resonating with people, it's not because I'm sitting there thinking about the next thing I'm going to say. It's because I'm being pulled forward by that passion. It's like the thread is coming through me and speaking through me, like you're saying, and I'm sure you could really feel the same thing as well. And I think that this Aries season with Mercury entering Aries, that we'll really experience a lot of that.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
let's see here. What do we have next? Is this the next one?
This is the new moon. I
Okay,
think.
let's.
Yeah.
When does Venus enter Taurus? Let's see. Let me see that.
I think that's a little after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll do the new moon. All right. Cool.
All right. So the new moon coming up on the 11th is really a beautiful new moon. You know, I mean, I'm looking
You're.
forward to it.
I feel like you're biased when you say that.
I'm biased because it's right over top of my sun and right before my solar return. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
like
22
literally
degrees
two,
though. I
two.
mean, this
Yeah.
follows up that full moon waning energy down to this right here. It's you're right with this new moon, it still has a little bit of that relationship healing theme because now if we even look at a few days before this, well, Mercury will have even been talking to Chiron over here as
Mhm.
well, and we get another glimpse from our mind's perspective about what that healing means. And like let's say we've been on this journey, we've been on this purpose since this full moon, and now we really have had time to like let it sink in. And now when Mercury enters Aries and starts talking to Chiron, we get to see it in our mind, we get to experience it in our mind. We'll be speaking about this passion, and then all of a sudden this new moon comes, and then we're ready to set some beautiful intentions for how we want to maybe handle this next season coming up.
Exactly. Exactly. And I mean, Venus is still in the mix here. Venus is still close, very close to this new moon. So we still have those Venetian elements. And as you can see as well, it's in a direct sextile with Mars and a very close sextile with Jupiter, right? So on either side, we have that beautiful, beautiful air energy influencing this, which is a very big kind of ignition, right? Air fuels the fire, and so as we can see with this chart, it's a huge um, surge in what we can bring forth. And new moons, this is the first new moon of the year too, and what a first new moon of the year, like holy. So not only are we in a sextile with Jupiter, which is really expanding the intentions that we're bringing through this new moon, but we also have a sextile with Mars, the ruler of both the sun and the moon in this position, the ruler of this new moon, and bringing forth in that mutual reception too with Mercury, bringing forth a deeper sense of what needs to happen in order for our seeds that we've been, kind of. To me, this is what it feels like. It feels like the full moon was really about kind of clearing the way for, the seeds to. It's kind of like when you plant when you plant a garden, you have to clear out all the old vegetation in order for all the new life to really be planted. You gotta make sure the soil's nourished. You gotta kind of clear out all the old shit. You gotta dig up all your old stuff from last year's harvest, right? You gotta clear it all out before you can plant stuff. You can't just plant stuff in the with all the stuff. Things won't grow, right? So you have to prepare for growth. You have to prepare the right environment for your seeds to be planted. And that's really what that full moon was doing for us. And now that we have this new moon, it's like, okay, the environment is kind of prepared. And now what's left is the work of tilling the soil, planting those seeds, and watering them and nurturing them, right? And then that nurturement will be continued as we enter into Taurus season in late April. But what we're really seeing here is, to me at least, this is really an awakening of the the soul energy of what needs to happen, right? When we have this aspect with Jupiter and Mars in a nice trine, both in sextile with the new moon and Venus. This is huge in my opinion for creating. And all planets are direct. Utilize, please, for the love of God, utilize this, because this is setting you up for the rest of the year, the rest of the astrological year. So if you don't utilize this time wisely, then you're going to kind of be catching up the whole year. We don't want that energy to kind of be the main kind of fuel for our year. We want to have a clear intention. We want to have, a clear drive, a clear sense of purpose for where we're going and what we're doing and what we're accomplishing. And if there's still stuff that needs to be cleared out, you've got some time. So do it. Do the work. Take this time now to prepare the soil. That's what I'm saying. Prepare the soil so that you can actually plant some really good hardy seeds, right? And have a really healthy environment for your intentions, for your desires, for your dreams, for your passions to actually be made manifest. Because if you don't have the right environment, then nothing can grow. Right. And so we have to create that environment. We have to create that environment. And if we don't, then we're going to not have as bountiful and fruitful of a harvest and of a growth as we would all like. Right. So those who utilize this time wisely will find themselves very, very successful through this season. I truly believe that. And ultimately through this year, because with Venus there, come on, man, come on, a new moon with Venus, and then also in sextile, which is a beautiful aspect, by the way, with Jupiter and Mars. Come on, utilize this, like all direct. Mars giving us the passion and drive to actually weigh out all the options. Jupiter giving us that the fuel and the expansive and the visionary aspect that we need, and the new moon igniting it. Like it's like the spark that allows us to really go from here. Now, and all of this coming out of that Mars conjunct the North Node.
Now, Will, you're giving a lot of really great perspectives. I fully agree with all of what you're saying. But let's also talk about some of the potential downsides of this energy as well, because we have nothing but air and fire. And when we have nothing but air and fire, we have to remember that this is burnout city too. Like you got to make sure that when you're using this new moon energy, that you're actually putting it towards, like, if you have a garden, don't go plant, 50 different types of things in a small space, like plant some very intentional crops. When it comes down to having this fire, like, don't start so many projects that you can't actually finish. Jupiter on Mars in Gemini, that screams, like heavy mental energy. Like, how many things do you want to wake up with, like a to-do list that's like a scroll that like falls down and rolls out the door? Make sure that you're using that Jupiterian energy and the Mars energy to channel in, like root into a specific domain. Like, get a domain and then work in that domain. Don't just like be like, oh, I'm going to jump from doing this to doing that to doing this, especially if you're in the spiritual community, get an idea. Like, if you want to be a tarot reader, be a tarot reader. If you want to be an astrologer, be an astrologer, like, don't try to do like 50 different types of things. Try to like find your real interest and hone into it. And I think that's really what this one pointed vision of Aries season and this new moon is really ultimately trying to do, which is, I think what Will is saying, is to clear out those old maybe thought pathways and weeds of our mind, of where we think we should be. And because I want to make sure that we're using this energy for the best perspective, instead of just being like, oh my God, I've got so much energy. And then all of a sudden now it's Taurus season. We've got Venus in Taurus, we've got Mars in Cancer. And now now we're overwhelmed with the amount of projects that we started with this new moon.
I mean, I totally agree. However, I don't think that can even happen, because we do have this Mercury Saturn aspect here that's really grounding those thoughts. So I think that even if you do have a lot of excitement for all these seeds that you want to plant, it's kind of like, if you did try to plant 300 seeds, most of them are going to die off, and the strongest will survive. And that's really what where the visionary energy that's being fueled is going for. So it's kind of like what Brent said, it's like you don't want to plant 1,000 seeds, but to be honest, you can, and most of them will die, and you have to realize that. So they're
going to die in Taurus
nurture
season.
the ones that you really desire, because otherwise, if you're just throwing a bunch of mystery seeds and hoping that, a few of them plant, then you're not going to know what's coming up. You're not going to have any, specific thing that that you're going to be going after. So you want to make sure that, you're nourishing and creating the healthy environment to plant the right seeds, and the seeds that really ignite your soul. And that's the only way to avoid burnout is to always, always, always follow passion and follow the direction of soul. Because as soon as you start swaying from that path, you start creating resistance and you start creating struggle. And that struggle and resistance is exhausting. It cannot be kept up. It's literally not biologically possible for it to be kept up, because we're designed for it to be temporary. Resistance is always temporary. It's meant to show us something. It's meant to pivot us in a different direction, and or it's meant to strengthen us in some way to prepare us for the future. It's not meant to be a lifelong thing. And a lot of us create this struggle for ourselves because we've been conditioned to believe that this is normalcy. This is just what is the norm, and that's not what we're here to do, and that's not what this new moon is going to help us with. So if you want to create resistance for yourself, then do that. Plant a bunch of seeds, see what happens, see what grows, and just hope for the best. But if you want to create real lasting success for yourself, utilize these visionary aspects: Mars sextile the new moon, and Venus, Jupiter in trine with Mars, Saturn sextile Mercury. All of this stuff is screaming, get the vision clear, get the vision grounded, get the vision secure. And once you do that, and exactly, like, it's kind of like, when I don't have a garden this year because I'm traveling, but when I would traditionally plant my garden in the springtime, I write a list of everything that I want to be planting. I write that list of, like, this is going to go here, and this is going to go there, and this is going to go there, and this is going to go here. And then I plant them when the time is right. Some of them need to be planted earlier, others need to be planted later, and so on and so forth, to make sure that, the whole vision is that. So prioritize. That's a very big, important element here. So I'm glad that you brought that up, Brent, because I think that's a very important thing to add.
I think you're completely right, too, in the fact that it's almost going to be nearly impossible to hold on to all those extra seeds. I'm especially looking at Mercury making those aspects to the north and south node as well. It's almost going to be like we're going to be looking at our handful of seeds and being like, whoa, like, a lot of these are not going to grow. A lot of these are not worth my time. I'm really on my actual path, on my actual destiny. And I realize now that I once had those seeds that I thought were useful, but now I don't really want to eat squash this year. Instead I want to grow some
some watermelon,
some watermelons this year. So all right, let's speaking of gardening, let's go ahead and get into the Venus enters Taurus.
Awesome.
So this is only 3 days after the new moon. This is like almost immediately
after my
after.
Birthday.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got a solar return of like 29 degree Aries, don't you?
29 degree. No,
is it, you have
like 23 degree sun and 8 degree Venus. I have my Venus return around the same time, so that'd be nice. But yeah, so I mean, anyway.
So here's that new moon. It's just barely sprouted. It's just barely started growing, and then immediately
moon exalted too, like right away. And as the moon's exalted, Venus enters into its domicile, which is a beautiful transition, in my opinion, because that's like, it's kind of like, when you plant your seeds, you're really hoping for a lot of rain, and then you're hoping for a lot of warmth and sunshine. And we're getting exactly that. That's why it's so important to prioritize what it is that you want to be growing, what intentions you want to be setting, what things you want to be creating, what projects you want to be starting. All these things are very, very important right now, because if you don't get that down pat, then how do you know that the conditions are going to be right? How do you know when the conditions are right if you're not even clear on what it is that you're growing, what it is that you're planting,
or if you're attached to the idea that, like, what you need to do versus what you are attached to doing because of some kind of conditioning, that attachment is going to get ripped from you, and it's going to be painful. And that's really what I'm seeing coming up with this energy here. It's we've been
Yeah,
doing the
especially when
relationship healing.
Venus conjuncts Uranus there.
Yeah, and I'm looking over here too at Mercury conjunct Ceres, because one of the
Yeah,
themes of Ceres as an asteroid is that she was too attached to her offspring. She was too attached to her ideas. She was too attached to Persephone, which is the Persephone ultimately got ripped from her, and that means like we've got to be careful with like trying to force something when it's not really for us, versus following our spirit, following soul.
totally, totally. Especially with Mercury there, and in that aspect of um, are we really following the passion of our soul when we're expressing ourselves, and when we're looking at ourselves on a mental level, or are we doing it out of reactivity, which is a big downside of Mercury and Aries that we really have to be mindful of this whole season, for pretty much the rest of the season, because if we're coming from a place of reaction, we're not getting anywhere, and we're also not able to resonate with people as deeply, because we're reacting to what they're saying, as opposed to saying, what do I need to say, what needs to be said from soul, and then I'm going to go and say that. The
Mhm.
people that are constantly waiting for someone to say something so they can react and respond emotionally in some kind of like crazy
I
outrage,
can't
it's
believe
like,
you said that.
oh, how dare you,
That's against
ah
everything I believe.
you bigot. So you don't want to be that person. You want to be someone who thinks for themselves and speaks for themselves and comes from that grounded place of soul, and that's where true passion lies. If
Yep.
we don't have that, then we're lost. And the sun also will make a trine with Juno here too during this time, which will
Mhm.
again bring some more light to the overall direction, some bring some one pointedness to our relationships, and say, what is that direction happening. And to be honest, I don't think we will really think about relationships until around this time of Aries season, after the full moon. It's kind of like, we did our little bit with relationships, then we step into like the whole, like, okay, what do I want for me? It's like very much more like
Yeah.
self-centered for that point. But then by the time we get to like mid-April, the end of Aries season, that's when we start to think about that again and say, like, okay, where's that one point in this coming from? Where do I want to
Mhm.
go? What wants to be kind of, what do I want to create for myself? What am I looking for long term? And if you're in a current relationship, is this relationship serving that vision? Is it fueling that fire? Is it bringing that passion? And if you're not in a relationship, thinking about, what needs to happen in order for me to feel fulfilled in relationship. What are kind of my long-term desires here? Am I looking just to have fun, or am I looking to create something sustainable and long-term? Right.
Well, when you look at Aries season, do you generally look at like, how the ram will like put its head down and will just like charge? It's like the ram as an animal is like mostly a blind animal. Like its vision is literally very, very weak. When you look at Aries season, do you look at this like I'm wearing blinders until it's like I'm just running in a direction, I'm putting on blinders, and then now we get something like Venus and Taurus where we slow down and we look around? Like, is Aries season something that's easy to miss if you don't stop and look around?
Totally. I think it's one of the quickest seasons.
Yeah,
It always feels like, oh, I wish I did more. I always feel that
yeah.
way in Aries. It doesn't matter how much I do. I always feel that way.
I mean,
And
we're
maybe it's
already in
because I'm an Aries,
the
but
fourth month, or yeah, fourth month of the year already.
I
It
know.
definitely feels like that with Aries season starting it off.
Totally, totally. And like I said, Aries season always feels fast, and especially with all this mental and fire energy, like it's gonna go by quick, and you got to take advantage of this. You got to take advantage of all these planets direct. You have to take advantage of planting the right seeds for the rest of your year. Set those intentions. This is like, New Year's resolutions. The reason that most, like literally 90% of New Year's resolutions do not stick is, and I believe this, is because it's not the start of the year.
Yeah,
Like, of course, it's like saying, mid-year, oh, I'll just start. It's like, no, it's not. It's plant seeds on equinoxes. Always, it's plant seeds on equinoxes and let go on solstices. These are great things to, remember.
and
And
simple too.
very simple. You utilize the energy of the earth and the cosmos coming together to make and plan your decisions. And trust me, everything will work out a lot better than trying to just do it your own way.
Yeah,
It's like
certainly,
there's an
certainly.
element to free will there for sure, but it's like, do you want to go with the current, or do you really want to try and swim upstream? It's like, okay. Even if you want to get there, there's better ways of doing it, right?
That's a good way to say that. Yeah, you want to look at this last chart?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see here. So we have Mars. Oh, zooming in a lot. Mars trine Jupiter. Let's get that circled here. Jupiter.
Exact. And this has been kind of blooming for quite a while, by the way. So we've been like, even in the with the new moon, like it's been kind of happening since then, right? But this is exact, so we always want to look at the exact aspect of that because that's the peak. It's the peak of it. So
26 degrees.
26 degrees, and in a pretty much perfect sextile with the sun as well. So right away, this is so much momentum, right? It's like this is the final burst of Aries season. We're coming to the end here. It's 27 degrees Aries. We're coming to the end of the season. We're kind of, this is it. This is the final little run of Aries season, and we have so much expansive energy. We have this kind of grounded expansion from Jupiter in Aquarius. We have this real deep visionary aspect, especially the late degrees of Aries as well. Very visionary aspect. And then with Mars there again, right with the moon too, we can see that when we can harness the vision, when we can harness the vision and take advantage of all these things that we've been planting, it's like this is the opportunity that we have to sustain, and continue to nourish. This is happening on a mental level because all the analogies we've used has been about like gardening and shit. But the truth is this is happening on a mental level, right? This is happening on a mental level.
The mind is a garden, though. The mind is a soil.
Garden. Yep. Yeah, exactly. Earl Nightingale.
Yeah.
So exactly. And this trine is I think it's a very, very beautiful trine because Jupiter, like in Aquarius, creates this grounded sense of expansion, as opposed to a lot of times, just, like even Jupiter in Pisces, it's a beautiful place for Jupiter, but it's not very grounded. But that's not the point of Jupiter in Pisces either, mind you, right? The point of Jupiter in Pisces is to be the more ungrounded and kind of blow through the barriers of what should be, versus Jupiter in Aquarius is, really it's a lot more methodical about where we need to grow, where we need to still continue to bloom, right? And with that Mars in Gemini, it's really, we're continuing to weigh out the options and saying, what are we prioritizing here? And then it all comes back down to meet in the middle with the sun in Aries, right? Which is that one pointedness. So it all comes back to one pointedness, and exactly what Brent and I were saying before of, you can try and plant all these seeds, you can try and set all these intentions, you can try and do a million things, but what's really going to stick? Trying to do a million things at 1% or doing one thing at 100%. It's like that's the final burst of Aries energy. If we want to take the most supreme advantage of that, that's what you have to do.
Yeah, and I really see that, just that importance being so important with the two air signs, between Aquarius and Gemini. There's so much mental activity. There's so much to choose from. You could Google anything, but are you gonna, or even a better example, you can ask any question that you possibly could, but what's the right question? What's a better question? And as you hone into that, then you get more and more precise, and that creates the one-pointed vision that you're really trying to go on, instead of having this kind of jack of all trades point of view about life and where I'm going. Like, if you want to try to be an artist and then a musician and then digital nomad, and then you want to try to be all of these different roles, it's like put them in one direction, and then you'll watch them start to come to fruition.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So, are we final thoughts on Aries season?
The last thing I will say is just that in general, again, maintain that one-pointedness. That's the biggest reason why people like Aries season just blows by people, is because they don't have that one-pointedness. They try and do everything. It's like a ram is most successful when it's a targeted headbutt. It's a targeted, lunge. It's a
Mhm.
targeted strike, as opposed to trying to just butt everything. It's like you're going to get exhausted. You're going to burn yourself out. Right? Exactly what Brent was saying earlier about the fire and air kind of, dominance throughout the season. Is it's very easy for burnout, but only when you're going against what you know you need to do. And
Mhm.
that's a very, very simple element. So in Aries, we really got to take good care of our mind. We got to take good care of our adrenals, take care of our nervous system, right? Because that's what allows us to function as well. So make sure you're, up in the chaga, the ratio, all the good stuff, making sure you're taking good care of those adrenals, ashwagandha, whatever you got to do to, you know, you know, main, maintain the kidneys. Aries also rules the head, so be very mindful of your head, your brain, migraines, all that stuff. These things are common during this season, and take good care of your mind. Take good care of your mind. Meditation, get into that relaxed parasympathetic response, and that I truly think that we'll have a good Aries season if we take good care of our mind, and if we allow ourselves to really set course on a more one-pointed direction and follow that passion, follow our soul. Anything to wrap up with?
I love that, and I just want to say, this season, like, we're really getting fired up right now. We
Oh
want to we
yeah.
we want to make sure that we're actually like putting that into our habits, into our daily routines. We want to make sure that we're consistently doing the things.
Consistency.
Consistency, because Aries likes to initiate, and when we get initiating, we like to just try it. It's like we do a lot of free trials. It's important to live life not like a free trial, but to live life like a subscription.
Exactly. Commit to it.
Mhm.
Commit to it. Don't
That's
just quit after the 7-day free trial, my friends.
that's what I'm that's my final advice here. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Happy birthday, beautiful Aries. We love you. And we'll see you for Taurus season, my friends. Much love.
Yep.
Thanks for joining me once
Thank
again,
thank you
Brent. Thanks
guys.
everybody
Yep.
for listening. And I'll see you on the other side.